Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strong Start Sundays. My name is Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket, and I'm so excited to see you all tonight. If you are here, please leave your name in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. I am so excited to have an amazing guest in Jimmy Casas. Jimmy and I have known each other for several years, and it really is an honor to have you tonight, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Rachel. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's great catching up with you.
Yeah, well, I got to see Jimmy a couple of times over the summer. We saw each other in Iowa, and I had an opportunity to ask him some questions about Hy-Vee, which is a very important part of Jimmy's story, as he was one of the employees there, right, Jimmy?
That's right. 3 years in high school. That was the best. So absolutely.
And we have that in common because I also used to work at a grocery store when I was in high school. And I think you can learn a lot of good lessons from working in service to other people. So I think that's definitely something we have in common. And I also saw Jimmy when we were in Seattle at the United Conference. And one of the things I will always appreciate about him is just his authenticity. And I remember being very nervous because that was my first time getting that proposal acceptance at that national conference. And Jimmy was just so kind and helping me get over my nerves and talking about his first time presenting. So thank you again for that, Jimmy, thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, that was, I still remember that. It was for first time at NASSP. Mine was in San Diego. And I think I told you I went there, and I think there were 7 or 8 people in the session. So I was like, hey, I didn't care. I felt really good about it. It was awesome. And I do know that when we got done, I remember a couple of people sticking around. That made me feel really good too. So it was
Yeah, I love it because everyone has different experiences as speakers, and that helped me. I'm like, okay, let me temper my expectations, and I love that you still had that positive experience. And it is important to stay after and build those relationships. So yeah, I love that. So tonight we're going to be talking about culture and our legacy. And we know our leadership legacy and just the way that we interact with everyone is so very important. And you are the guru, Jimmy, when talking about school cultures and how we can have a positive experience for the students in our building every single day. So I wanted just to kick off with you. What are some of the things that we should be thinking about as we are building that positive school culture?
Yeah. The first thing I would say, Rachel, is I think people define culture different ways, and I'm not sure there's a right way or a wrong way. I think there's just different ways. But I mean, just having studied it forever, I do know it's like customs and rituals and traditions and all these types of things. And we talk about, how people feel, right? That's kind of climate, right? And how these types of things. But I think after a while, I finally just settled in. Is I would walk into buildings, and what I would notice is I would just notice the way people behaved, right? Whether I'd walk into a main office, I would pay attention how I was treated. I would pay attention if I was treated differently, if I had a suit on or if I walked in with a hoodie on, right? These things are important. And so I'd be in the building and people didn't know who I was, but some people would treat me amazingly. Other people necessarily would ignore me. Some people would even talk to me, right? So all that kind of started just really, really paying close attention to it and recognizing that eventually, to me, I just kind of landed on cultures, to me, just how people behave in an organization, right? And to me, the behaviors always have to align with whatever our core values are. And so it's really important when it comes to culture is, first of all, who are we as an organization? Who do we want to be as an organization, right? And the people that work within that organization, obviously. And then more importantly, does our behavior match or mirror those values? And if not, well, then what are we doing here, right? We're just putting words up on the wall, right? And that's the whole idea of words on the wall. Does the behavior of the adults in an organization match or mirror the words on the wall? Now, sometimes I get a little bit of pushback on this. I know people sometimes don't like to hear it, but I always have believed that we do spend a lot of energy, resources, even money, trying to figure out how to curb student behavior in schools. And that's fine. And some places have done a very good job of that. But I always say, but where's the framework for the adult behavior? Because I think it's the adults that actually cause the culture, not the children. And so that's always been an important thing to me, right? And that's kind of like the whole idea of the culturized principles, is because for me, I recognized that I too, as a building leader, had lost my way, and my behavior isn't matching the mirror, the words on the wall, right?
Yeah.
And I remember reading Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, and it just clicked, right? Like, yeah, like that all makes sense to me, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are the values? Who are you? And I remember being very intentional in trying to identify who really it was I, right? And that for me came around 2005. And it was then that I really began to kind of play with these four core principles and trying to actually see if I could behave that way, which is not easy, by the way, right? I
Right.
tell people that, like, hey, listen,
Exactly.
I'm not saying this is easy stuff, people, right? Like, we're not perfect people, we're not perfect beings. But what it did was it created a framework for me of how I wanted to behave, and not just at school, but in my entire every arena of my life, right? And and what I learned is that once I started working on my behavior, then I noticed I started getting better results. And so I realized, yeah, I don't think it's them. I think it's me.
Yeah. And
And
that's
I've
a
learned
great
that. Mhm.
reflection point, because I think a lot of times as people, we try to say it's somebody else, right?
Yeah.
It's somebody or something else out of our control. But like you said, it really is us. And when we
Yeah.
change behaviors, we then can influence everything around us,
That's right.
positively or negatively or neutrally,
Yeah.
right? So I love that you lift that up, because I think that's a point for all of us to reflect on. What are we putting out, and how is that impacting other
Yeah.
people?
Well, it's a good point you mentioned because, when you look at if you look at an organizational structure, and you begin to kind of see it as there's these different layers within a system, right? Whether it's central office or even a board of education, right? Or a school building or a classroom or whatever that layer is in the organization. I think what messes with a lot of educators, if you're a classroom teacher and you have students that are misbehaving or not meeting your expectations or not even doing the work that you want them, and you feel that pressure, right? Hey, listen, it's my job to get these kids from point A to point B, or oh my goodness, the state testing's coming up, or my colleague down the hall is 3 days ahead of me, right? And my pacing's off. All that messes with us, right? I know it does. And so, but it does the same thing. It doesn't matter what your role is. Obviously, it does it for building principals and leaders as well. It does it also for central office personnel as well. But the problem is we got to be a little careful. And this is where I'm a big believer. And I learned this a long time ago as I started trying to recognize, like, I can't control all this, right?
Mhm.
But I do have this little cog within the system, right? It's like I have my own little system within the greater system. And I can't get frustrated with other layers of the system when I'm not even doing it in my own layer of the system, right?
Yeah.
So a simple example would be is we learn from culture is that communication or ineffective communication, the inability to communicate effectively can really frustrate people. And it
Mhm.
becomes very negative. There's a huge undercurrent. It's very negative. And it's easy for us to say, well, they don't communicate and they're always telling me last minute and I had no idea. Now I'm scrambling. And we start going to what I call the perimeter. And the perimeter means I'm now looking for something else in the system to blame. But what I try to help people understand is that's okay, but I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think people complain about your communication ever? Do you ever go to people last minute? Do you ever forget to follow up on something? Do you ever not get back to somebody when you said you were going to? Do you not answer your emails in a timely fashion? When
Mhm.
was the last time you actually reached out to a parent for just to reach out to a parent, right? Without having it be an issue, right? Well, do you see you're doing the same thing? So if you're going to be out here complaining about this, don't you think it kind of says something? Well, but you're doing the same behaviors, right? So what can we do? Well, let's work on our part of the system and
Mhm.
see if you can get your part of the system cleaned up before you start looking at other parts of the system. And I think that's for us, the internal behavior of recognizing I can't ask other people to do what I'm not even willing to do myself. And
Yeah.
that's where the core principle number 2 of Culturize comes from, because I recognize I was the same way. I was they and them, right? Who's the they, by the way? Well, it's certainly central office, right? If you're a building leader. And if you're a classroom teacher, it's they is the principals or the administration.
Mhm.
If you're a student or a parent, the they is the teachers. And so we're all kind of in that through line, right? That's what I always say. We're all in the through line. We're all causing the culture. So what can we do differently to get a better result? Control what you can control. What's in your sphere of influence.
Yeah, I love that. I remember years ago seeing that graphic and it would say, this is in my control and sort of this is out of my control. And everything in the control was sort of my reaction to things, how I respond when this happens. And so I think if we are introspective, we can come to a place where we can admit that we're not perfect and that there are things that we can do to move our own personal needles in a direction that's more positive and more in a way that supports where we want to be. And if everyone does that to move their portion of the needle, then we get to see the fruits of our collective labor in terms of having a more positive school culture where we're not, like you said, I like when you said talking about the perimeter. We're not looking around at other people, but we are looking at ourselves first to say, what can I change and how can I get better?
Yeah. And if you are, I always try to give really practical things that you can do, right? So if you feel like, hey, I Jimmy's right, I kind of do get stuck on that perimeter sometimes. I get kind of in that blaming mode. I get frustrated and, because it affects me. Well, of course, right? We're human beings, right? But the one thing you can do is you can pause for a second and say to yourself, just simply ask yourself a question. I wonder why they failed to communicate. If I can start there, then I come in at it from a point of curiosity, a point of wonder, a point of grace, a point of non-judgmental. I'm already off to a better start, right? Yes. My heart is coming at it differently, right? Yeah. I'm not frustrated. I'm not angry. I'm not resentful. I'm coming soft at it, right? Yeah. And so that's what I mean about that's the part I can control. I'm working on me knowing I can get a better result. And we have to understand that people do behave the way they behave for certain reasons. And what we learn is because these people have experiences, right? So, well, no wonder they behave that way. Of course, you don't have those experiences, so you can't understand that. That's your grace. That's your non-judgment to them. How about we be a little bit curious, find out what happened? Why did that happen? And then all of a sudden we think like, oh my God, well, no wonder. Yeah, that's called empathy, right? Well, therefore, I'm already a better version of myself. And so all these things really intersect. And it's really just human behavior. It's just the psychology of why do people behave the way they behave. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of really good things that come from it. And if you can work on that, it does take practice. So you have to kind of work on yourself. But the good news is when you don't do it, you'll at least you'll catch yourself. And you'll think, yeah, of course that happened to me, Jimmy, you idiot, because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. Yeah. And so I tell people, but I've also been practicing it literally for, over 20 years. So of course I'm pretty good at it now, but not in the beginning. It's not, it doesn't work that way. Right. I always say you're trying to behave your way back to excellence. How can I work my way back to be the person, which I always say is that person in the interview chair, which is the best version of all of us.
Yeah.
And we're pretty darn good in the interview chair. We're really good in the interview chair.
Yes, we're definitely at our best there. And I think when I was listening to you talk, Jimmy, about sort of how our immediate reaction may be not to give grace, a lot of that I think has to do with time. It's easier to make some assumptions about somebody or what their motivations are because it takes time to ask someone, are you okay? Is there something that's going on? How can I support you? I noticed, this was late. Instead of saying that person is not giving their best, there may be a reason why, right? Yeah. And so I really appreciate you lifting up grace and empathy. That's something that we all need more of right now. And if we can begin to model that as leaders, as teachers, as people within the building central office, then I think we really show that model for everyone else to adopt, which is really can make a huge difference in a school's culture.
Yeah, so kind of in a roundabout way, Rachel, I've kind of mentioned core principle number 2 is model the way, right? Or expect excellence. And that's all about modeling. But you can begin to understand how core values can begin to influence your own behavior and change you. Who do you want to be? So if you look at core principle number 4, nurture and hope, that just says to me, I know these people want to be great at what they do, right? So that's a mindset. Where expecting excellence is about modeling, being a merchant of hope is really a mindset. It's a mindset. You have to believe that people are not trying to not be successful, not be effective, not be great at what they do. Again, listen, I'm a realist. I'm not naive. I know there are people who work in organizations right now who, for whatever reason, are not bringing their best selves, who are not good people, who are gossipers, who are whatever they're doing, right? I understand that. But what I'm saying to people is, but there was a time they were not like that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time they weren't that way. So the question is, do you want to invest time in these people to understand why or not? And if not, that's okay. I'm not going to judge it, but they behave that way for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I can't have a value like that and then not actually model it or live it.
Yeah.
Because then it's just words on the wall again, right back to where we started. Like, then what's the point?
Yeah.
So, but if you want to live that, it will help you be a better version of yourself. And I'm not, suggesting that people adopt the culturalized principles. I'm asking people, what are your principles? And live those principles, right? That's all you can do.
That's it. That's all you can do. And we have a comment coming in from Dr. Sonia Matthews. It's so great to see you tonight. That, we are great in our interview chairs and we have to be grounded in why we're doing this work. That is so true. And she also talked about it, this work is tough, right? And we know that. And I'm really glad we appreciate Dr. Matthews, your authenticity and your vulnerability in sharing that, because one of my questions for Jimmy that I wanted to ask you was, how can we as leaders and educators really help to keep that positive culture, that morale during challenging seasons? Because I think this is a really challenging season. Not only are we in the end of the year, but it's a busy time. And there are many things that we're considering. We're looking at sometimes some staffing cuts, some budget cuts. There are definitely lots of things that are challenging our work right now in this season. So what would be some advice that you have for teachers, leaders, everyone in between to help with this time and this process?
Yeah, Sonia is absolutely right? There's no doubt first of all, we work with variables that are unpredictable, right? And we're working really with our most precious commodity, which is children. So of course we feel emotionally drained. Anybody who cares about young people is going to be emotionally drained.
Yeah.
We are no different than any other first responder. These are very high pressure, very emotional jobs. No doubt about that. And so having said that, I often think of, sometimes I think we have to go back to what I would just call basic fundamentals, which is, well, what creates a high performing culture? Why are some cultures so much stronger than others? Why can I go into a district, Rachel, literally go to one school and people feel really good about that school? It's a really good culture. Kids are happy. Staff is not barking at children. Parents talk very positively about their school. I'll go literally 3 miles down the road and it's complete opposite. So what's going on there, right? Well, we know leadership plays a big role in that. There's no doubt about that. Leadership plays a big role in that. But what I mean by fundamentals is sometimes we know that when it comes to high performing cultures, that's why I believe that relationships is still always going to be the foundation of everything. And it's because it builds trust. So if you're in a culture where trust has been violated in a bazillion ways it could be violated, that is hard to overcome because that morale issue is always going to create an undercurrent that's always going to come back and get you over and over. So one of the things we can do is, I believe, is fundamentally is just go back to what we believe is a starting point for us, and that is investing in people, right? Yeah. If we are going to have to manage a difficult conversation with someone, it's a lot easier to have that conversation if they believe you actually care about them, right? If the only time I ever talk to Rachel is when Rachel does something wrong, whether Rachel is a student, whether she's a bus driver, whether she's a teacher or a principal, if the only time I talk to Rachel and invest time in Rachel is to tell her something she's not doing right, well, of course, I'm not going to get a result out of that, right? A good result. Right. So I would say this, what can we specifically do? Number one is, I can tell you what's hurting us. I'll tell you, let me start there first before we talk about what can help us. But what is hurting us is, I do believe this, and I study this a lot, so I know it, and I'm constantly testing it. But everywhere I talk to people, when I talk about it, they're saying, that's exactly what happens in our organization. And that is, I believe, for whatever reason, I don't know the reason, but I know it happens, and that is, there's this thing that I call just an opt-out culture. There are people opting out everywhere. And the reason they opt out, I believe, is because we allow them to opt out. And so, for example, is if I say to someone, tell me which teacher writes the most referrals in your building. Tell me which bus driver kicks kids off the bus more than any other bus driver. Tell me which employee you've had to talk to numerous times about how they would treat children. Tell me which teacher or employee calls in sick more than any other employee. You know what? Everybody knows who these people are. So the question is this, then why do they do these things? And then everybody wants to give me 100 reasons around the perimeter about why they do it. And I say, you know what? Nope, it's actually very simple. There's one reason and one reason only. It's because we allow them to. And if we're going to create a culture where children are allowed to just not do work, well, then I'm not going to do work either. And if I'm going to not have to be held to a higher standard because I don't show up every time we have a PD day and I take my sick day on that day, well, if you're going to allow me to keep doing that, I'm just going to keep doing it. And so that's what I mean about these things are not easy to address.
Yeah.
But that is I think I can tell you what doesn't fix culture, and that is jeans and donuts, people. It will help your climate for a little bit. Do you remember during COVID, Rachel, when after COVID was happening, we were having all this money coming, all this ESSER money? There were districts everywhere giving super great bonuses to teachers. Oh, that will solve it. We just want to take care of them. We're going to give you a $5,000 bonus to every teacher. Literally 2 days later, we're complaining about something. And it's because that isn't what drives a culture. What drives a culture is human connection. What drives a culture is, this is my people. They have my back. And that even when they do something that they shouldn't be doing, I should have a good enough relationship to go to Rachel, say, Rachel, what is going on? I am worried about you, my friend. Something seems off about you. Talk to me about what's going on. And if I have a relationship and have built collateral and invested in you, there's a good chance you're probably going to open the door for me a little bit to walk in to see what's going on in your world. And now we can figure this out. And so, I'm very passionate about this because I think we spend a lot of money in this country on little things, little tools and little programs. People, save your money. I'm just going to be really honest. And I've always said that. That's why I don't sell a single tool. I just give them away. In fact, I'd rather help you build your own tool. That's what I'd rather do. Because what we know is the tool isn't going to fix your problem, people. The program's not going to fix your problem. We have all sorts of programs all over this country, people. It's us. And if we can figure that out. So just start working on our behavior, recognizing and investing in people, and start building meaningful relationships. And when kids don't want to have a relationship or adults don't want to have a relationship with us, we have to figure out and understand why that is. That's what I would say. I know that's kind of a long one, but I get pretty fired up about this right now.
No, I can hear the passion. And again, I agree with everything that you said. There are definitely some surface level things that we can do to help support staff, but the long-term culture is built brick by brick, person by person, day by day in those daily interactions.
And by the way, I'm not saying don't bring donuts for your staff, and I'm not saying don't let them wear jeans. Let them do those things too, but that's not enough is what I'm saying, right?
I agree.
It's not enough. You've got to do more than that. That seems so surface level to me, and it's just a little quick fix, but people do appreciate those, but then it has to be done consistently too, right? And it's more meaningful when it's more personal, right? It's more meaningful when it's more personal.
Definitely. I agree with everything that you said. Like, I hear the passion in your voice. And I think this is such a critical conversation right now because many schools are experiencing just what you said. There's no school that's immune to that. And we want our teachers to be successful. We want our school leaders to want to come to work every day. We want our students and families to want to be excited about coming to school every day. And there are things that we can do, some shifts that we can do to help improve that culture and climate for everyone around us, including ourselves as well. So as we close, I know the time is coming down toward an end. I wanted to ask you, since you said we're getting back to basics, that's what you recommend. What is like something that leaders and educators should be prioritizing as that daily practice every day so that we can continue to either maintain or to build that culture that we all want? What would you suggest?
I'm going to give them a very simple framework. Here's how a framework would work, right? By the way, free tools, right? Here's what's happening right now. It is May, so clearly we're closing down a school year. And of course we put everything at the end of the school year, so we're just literally on adrenaline flow all the way to the end of the year, right? Like I can still see it every day. I lived that for 22 years as a high school principal, right? Like, boom, right? I am going all in for as long as I can go until I'm just going to crash as soon as that last day of school comes, right? But the challenge is I'm also trying to open up another school year right now,
Yes.
right? I'm registering. I've got, we've got we're placement of students. I'm hiring people. I'm getting ready for, so I'm doing 2 jobs at the same time. That goes for all of us, right?
Yep.
And so we have to think about that. It doesn't matter what our role is. But an example what you could do specifically is follow a simple framework that says this. I know this, that come August, and in some schools September, depending on which part of the country you live in, there's this thing called welcome back to school, convocation, whatever you call it, okay? What do we all really want out of that? First day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, whatever it is, length of time. Everybody's different. I know what we want. We want to create the best experience that we've ever created for teachers. You know why? Because if I can do that, that means teachers look forward to coming to work. They want to be there. And they know they love coming to a place where they feel loved, valued, appreciated, and have, most of all, ready for this, have a voice. That's what they want. They want a voice at the table. And they want it to be a meaningful voice, not just don't give me this superficial nonsense. I want a real voice, okay? So why don't we just tell people that? Why don't we just tell them, you know what I want? I want to create the best welcome back experience we've ever had. That's the what, okay? Mm-hmm. The second part of the framework is the why. So why is that so important to you? Because people, I need you bringing your very best if we're going to serve these children. This is not easy work. And so wouldn't it be easier, though, if we were all doing it together, right? Wouldn't that be easier? Wouldn't it be easier if I didn't have to worry about a teammate gossiping behind my back? Wouldn't that allow me to bring my better self to children today, right? So the what is the vision of what we're trying to create, and why is that so important? But that third piece is the one we always skip out on, Rachel, and that is, if we were going to build that, if we were going to create that for all of us, not just for us, but to impact those children, then what would convocation look like, people? And I would ask everybody that question. And that way, everybody, remember, everybody's responsible for the culture and climate, my friends. Quit putting that on one building principal. Quit putting that on one committee. Quit putting that on anybody. How about we just all own it?
Yeah.
And if we did that simple little step in everything we do, we would change every school in America. But we don't do it. And you know why? Because it takes too much time, Rachel. That's why.
Definitely takes time.
Why? But it violates every principle we talk about: relationships, investing in people, how we're trying to create. No, then we're just back to words on the wall. And so what we learn is when we live our values and we follow simple frameworks that we know are the basic fundamentals of everything we do, I promise you'll get better results. And every school that I've talked about in, or anybody who's ever done it, has always got back to me and said, game changer. Every time.
I love it. Yeah.
Just do that. And once you do it and you create an experience, that's core principle number 3, Rachel, create an experience that when people walk away, they carry the banner, which means, oh my God, best convocation we've ever had. Yep. And they're telling everybody that. Then you're living your values again. And because that will help you be a better version of yourself. So that's what I would say, people. What is it you want? Why do you want it? And then ask people to help you create that. And by the way, somebody's going to say, well, what if they don't want it? They'll just say, no, you figured out, Rachel. Well, then you have to figure out why they behave that way, because I know this. They wouldn't have never said that in the interview chair, people. They wouldn't have never said that in the interview chair.
Yeah.
So you know what happens? They've had some experiences and they're starting to lose their way. And I think great teachers can help kids find their way back. And I think great leaders can help teachers find their way back. That's what I think.
I love it. And I completely agree with you. I love the idea of investing that time so that people have the opportunity to say, this is our collective belief. This is our collective responsibility. And I could see teachers doing this with kids as well. Like,
Absolutely.
What culture do we want to
all
create?
The through line.
That's right.
And ask teachers to do that when we're not doing that.
That's right.
This whole thing. And by the way, core principle number 1 is about what? Investing time in people to understand why they behave the way they behave. There you go, audience. 4 core principles there in 30 minutes.
We love it. We love it. Thank you, Jimmy. And actually, I wanted to lift up this opportunity to talk about Culture Rise, because we have an amazing conference that's coming up in Chicago in June. So I'd love for you to give us a little bit more information about that.
People, let's just start with, first of all, Rachel Edoho-Eket's going to be there keynoting, right, and doing a session. So we're super excited about that, Rachel. Joe Sanfilippo is going to be kicking things off. Super jazzed about that. If you've never heard Joe speak, I'm telling you, it is a game changer, people. He's one of the best speakers I've ever heard speak. So definitely you'd want to be there for that. And one of the things I think that makes our conference just so special is that it is really about coming together and just connecting with people and being in an environment that will truly uplift you, because these people are real and genuine, sincere, and quite frankly, want to pour into people. So if you need a little bit of pouring into, I promise you this place to be, June 23rd and 24th. But here's the problem, people. There are only 42 seats left. So you better get going if you're going to come, because that'll be it. And we're closing. We do close down when we max out, we max out. So because we want to keep it a good, right where we say we're going to be. So
yeah, I'm so very excited to be there this summer. I've never been to Chicago, and I'm just so excited to be part of
Rachel,
Culture
I don't know how that's possible, girl, but I am so glad you're going to experience it.
I'm ready.
It is
my
favorite city in the country by far.
Yeah, I'm ready. And just, I cannot wait for that experience. So thank you, Jimmy, for letting us know. And how can people hear about it, or where can they find information about it?
Yeah, always keep it simple. Just go to jimmycostas.com. You can find everything there, whether it's our events, whether it's the institutes, whatever, just go to the event site or whatever. But anything you want is there. Yeah.
Awesome. And we're ready to close out. Thank you again for this amazing conversation tonight. Thank you to everyone who came on the call, contributed to the conversation. Thank you, Jimmy, of course, for being here. I want to remind you to pick up your copy of Relational Intelligence, the Key Factor to Exceptional School Leadership. Dr. Johnson and I worked really hard on this book to give you, like Jimmy said, some free things, right? This is not anything that costs money, but we certainly want to be able to give our best and contribute our best to everything that we do and to everyone we serve. Chris, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Appreciate it. So well, I would say that every episode with Rachel is probably pretty amazing. So that's pretty awesome. So
thank you.
Thanks for being here, Chris. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And as we close, again, I want to thank Jimmy Casas for being here. You always bring the great energy, and you just are an amazing leader, and we're so thankful. I would love to invite everyone back to come June 7th. We're going to have Principal Mo on, one of my principal colleagues from MAESP. She's absolutely amazing. We're so excited to see you there, and we wish you a wonderful week ahead. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Take care, bye.